Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to take part in this discussion by the International Luxembourg Forum for the Prevention of Nuclear Catastrophe. I think it is very opportune at this time to discuss expected changes in US-Russian relations once President Biden takes office in the middle of January. So I have done some research over the past couple of days on Mr. Biden's statements over the previous few years since he gave up his office of vice president. So starting from 2017 to this year, Mr. Biden has been giving several statements in which he has discussed his views on nuclear weapons, on relations with Russia, on issues relating to the Middle East. And so I will go over some of these. And in this also, I will give some of my own personal views. So with regard to your first question, earlier this year, Mr. Biden said that the next US president will have to address the world as it is in January 2021, and picking up the pieces will be an enormous task. He said he will have to salvage the United States' reputation, rebuild confidence in its leadership, and mobilize the country and the allies to rapidly meet new challenges. He said his foreign policy agenda will place the US back at the head of the table in a position to work with allies. He also said that the US has the strongest military in the world, and as president, he will ensure that it stays that way and will make the investments necessary to equip US troops for the challenges of the next century and not of the last one. He believes that the Kremlin fears a strong NATO, which he said is the most effective political military alliance in the world to this day. To counter Russia, Mr. Biden has said that he will keep the NATO alliance's military capabilities sharp and expand them. On non-proliferation and nuclear security, Biden has said that the United States cannot be a credible voice while it is abandoning the deals it negotiated from Iran to North Korea, from Russia to Saudi Arabia. According to Biden, Trump has made the prospect of nuclear proliferation, a new nuclear arms race, and even the use of nuclear weapons more likely. As president, Biden said that he will renew the United States' commitment to arms control for a new era. He mentioned the historic deal with Iran under what he called the Obama-Biden administration that blocked Iran's path to getting a nuclear weapon. Biden's view is that Iran now must first return to full compliance with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. If Iran does so, then the US would rejoin the agreement under Biden and use the United States' renewed commitment to diplomacy to work with the allies to strengthen and extend the Iran deal while more effectively pushing back against Iran's other destabilizing activities, according to him. He has also said that North Korea's growing nuclear weapons capability is one of the most significant challenges for his administration when he takes office, and that there are no simple solutions, but he will jumpstart a sustained coordinated campaign, including with China, to advance the objective of the denuclearization of North Korea. Now, Biden says that he also believes that arms control is integral to US national defense, and when it comes to nuclear weapons, to its self-preservation. On the other hand, Biden has also said that one should temper any premature euphoria, and he has been a strong supporter of the Bush administration's 2005 nuclear cooperation agreement with India and of providing nuclear technology to India. In my view, he has had some strange visions when he said that US nuclear reactors would provide enough electricity to power New Delhi and Mumbai through peak usage in the hottest summer day, end of quote. In my view, Biden's non-proliferation credentials in this case become suspect because India violated its commitments to the US and Canada when it carried out its nuclear test in May 1974. And India has rejected both the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, and the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, the CTBT. However, We should also remember that in 1995 and in 2000, under the Clinton administration, at the NPT review conferences, all states, including the United States, agreed that nuclear cooperation to countries should require full scope IAEA verification, which means to be a NPT non-nuclear weapons state. Finally, I would also mention that Mr. Biden has made several strong and even undiplomatic statements against President Putin and Russia's policies, and has claimed that the Russian president, to quote Mr. Biden, doesn't want me to be president, unquote. However, Biden has also said that Washington must keep open the channels of communication with Moscow, and that whatever their differences, the two sides need to negotiate arms control to keep the international peace and security. So to end this particular question, how relations will develop between President Biden and President Putin remains a significant challenge. Nevertheless, it would be significant were Presidents Biden and Putin to reaffirm the Gorbachev-Reagan understanding that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. Yes, on this one, Biden has said that arms control agreements that the United States negotiated with the Soviet Union were not concessions to an enemy or signs of weakness in the US, but according to him, to quote, they were a carefully constructed barrier between the American people and total annihilation. It was how the United States managed a dangerous rivalry and kept it from spinning out of control and prevented thermonuclear war, end of quote. He has said that for more than 4 decades, he has been deeply involved with strategic arms control agreements with the Soviet Union and the Russian Federation. He was a forceful advocate of the 1979 Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty number 2. He said he has also sought in the 1980s to oppose President Reagan's efforts to abandon the anti-ballistic missile treaty. And in fact, he says he did oppose President Bush Jr.'s abrogation of the ABM treaty in 2002, which he regarded as the cornerstone of strategic stability, which is also what is the position of the Russian Federation on the ABM treaty. He said he has also opposed the US's withdrawal under the Trump administration of the Open Skies Treaty, and that he has been a strong supporter of the 1987 INF, or Intermediate and Shorter Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. Now, Biden says that he acknowledges that the United States possesses one of the 2 largest arsenals of nuclear weapons in the world, and that he believes that the US nuclear deterrent has been the bedrock of national defense for the US since the end of the Second World War, and that so long as other countries possess nuclear weapons that could be used against the United States, it too must maintain a safe, secure, and effective nuclear arsenal to deter attacks against itself and against its allies. As such, Biden said that early in the Obama administration, they agreed to increase funding to maintain the US nuclear arsenal and to modernize nuclear weapons infrastructure. Now, on New START, he has said that failure to renew New START would lead to the absence of verifiable limits on US and Russian nuclear forces for the first time since the 1970s, and that abandoning New START would free Russia to expand its nuclear weapons capacity. Therefore, Biden has said he will pursue an extension of the New START treaty, which he calls an anchor of stability between the United States and Russia. He said in 2017 that he believes that the sole purpose of US nuclear weapons should be to deter and, if necessary, to retaliate against a nuclear attack, and that he will work to put this belief into practice. This is called the sole purpose for nuclear weapons. And in May this year, Biden opposed statements by the Trump administration to resume nuclear weapons testing. It is not clear yet whether Biden would extend New START for 5 years, as is provided for in the treaty, unconditionally, or whether he will have some conditions when he assumes office on the 20th of January. We shouldn't forget that in February next year, New START would expire if it is not extended by the 2 presidents. It is also not clear, to my knowledge, whether, in Biden's view, a follow-on treaty to New START should cover all types of nuclear weapons, and whether it should also include China and other states with nuclear weapons. And finally, it is also not clear what Biden's views are on new delivery systems, such as hypersonic boost glide vehicles and nuclear-powered missiles. In my view, these should also be on the negotiating table. US allegations of Russia's violation of the Intermediate and Shorter Range Nuclear Forces Treaty actually began under the Obama administration. Biden believes that Russia has violated the INF Treaty, but also he has opposed the abrogation of the INF Treaty by the Trump administration. In my view, at present, it seems unlikely that West European states would seek redeployment of US nuclear-armed ballistic or cruise missiles, but that might not be the case for East European and Baltic member states of NATO, which have voiced concerns about Russia's policies. As for further stationing of missile defenses in European NATO states, in my view, that might be an open question and depend to a large degree on Russian deployments of missiles such as the 9M729, which is a disputed missile under the INF Treaty, and other missiles of similar ranges. Now, reportedly, President Putin has offered a no deployment of INF range missiles in the European theater if the US agrees to do the same. But it is too early to gauge the response of the Biden administration to this proposal of President Putin. In my view, what is needed in Europe is de-escalation and not reintroduction of shorter and intermediate range nuclear armed missiles. And prospects for resumed conventional and nuclear arms control in the European theater should be on a positive track if experienced experts such as Rose Gottmuller are given senior positions in a Biden administration. This is a complex issue. Now, prevention of an arms race in outer space and non-weaponization of space are very important matters, especially as technologies are racing ahead of policy and negotiations, and there is talk of space forces. This harks back to the fascination of the Reagan administration with what he called the high frontier that envisaged space-based lasers, brilliant pebbles for missile defense, and other fanciful systems. The 1987 Reykjavik talks between Reagan and Gorbachev broke down over such systems. At the UN General Assembly's first committee that considers arms control last month, the United States voted against 4 resolutions covering matters such as prevention of an arms race in outer space, no first placement of weapons in space, and transparency and confidence building measures in outer space. But the US supported a United Kingdom-led resolution on reducing space threats through norms, rules, and principles of responsible behaviors. However, many experts have questioned the value added of this new novelty United Kingdom resolution, as it is less specific and less operational when compared with the long-standing resolution on preventing an arms race in outer space, or KAROS, that has enjoyed near universal support in the General Assembly for decades. The Russian Federation opposed the United Kingdom resolution, but supported the traditional KAROS resolution and the 2 other space resolutions that I just mentioned. So in my view, what is urgently needed is a prohibition of anti-satellite weapon tests in space, or ASAT, and on deploying any type of weapons in space. However, thus far, the differences between the various sides are too great to be bridged. This is a good question and also a complex one. As I've already noted, Biden's position is that Iran must first return to strict compliance with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. And if Iran does so, Biden says he will rejoin the agreement and use the United States' commitment to diplomacy to work with allies to strengthen and extend the JCPOA. Now, in my view, this does not seem to be a practical way to proceed, as it was only the United States among the JCPOA signatories to denounce this agreement, despite the International Atomic Energy Agency's conclusions that Iran was adhering to the JCPOA's limits, and the US then implemented a policy of maximum pressure on Iran, even to the extent of preventing Iran access to the international financial system to purchase medicines and protective gear to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic in Iran. In my view, a practical way forward would be for the US to immediately remove sanctions that affect COVID-19 pandemic-related medical supplies to Iran, and for both Iran and the United States to engage in a phased return to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. This, in my view, can be readily implemented within a few months after Biden takes office. This would allow for a return to the JCPOA limits on Iran's uranium enrichment activities under strict IAEA verification, and for Iran's nuclear power program to generate electricity to continue under IAEA safeguards. I would recommend that the Biden administration take the lead, along with the International Atomic Energy Agency, to initiate a nuclear safety initiative in the Persian Gulf region involving Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia to cover the safety and security aspects of nuclear activities in the region, and eventually also to bring in Israel. Finally, referring again to the First Committee of the United Nations General Assembly, both the United States and Israel last month voted against the resolution on the establishment of a nuclear weapon-free zone in the region of the Middle East, which traditionally always has adopted without a vote. Iran voted in favor of this resolution, incidentally. This same pattern of voting was repeated on the resolution on the risk of nuclear proliferation in the Middle East. And this resolution called on Israel to accede to the non-proliferation treaty, renounce its nuclear weapon capabilities, and place all of its nuclear facilities under IAEA safeguards, as is the case with Iran and all Arab states. Both Israel and the US voted against this resolution. So the international community, in my view, must unite to set up a zone free of nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East, which is one of the criteria on the basis of which the Non-Proliferation Treaty was made permanent in 1995. And in this regard, in my view, the United States should end its boycott of the General Assembly mandated conference on establishing a Middle East zone free of nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction, which is convened under the aegis of the UN, UN Secretary General, and also to encourage Israel to attend this as well. The US remains the largest exporter of weapons to the region of the Middle East, which is in violation of United Nations principles to not supply weapons to regions in conflict. It is highly likely that Biden will continue the policy of advanced weapons exports to Israel so that Israel can maintain its qualitative military edge over its adversaries. It is interesting that Biden has been a strident critic of the Saudi leadership, especially as regards the killing of a Saudi journalist at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. There is some speculation that to appease Biden, Saudi Arabia might announce diplomatic relations with Israel as a gift to Biden. Finally, Biden has been a supporter of the two-state solution as regards Palestine and Israel. Whether he sticks to this remains to be seen. This would be in contrast to Trump, who has been favoring a one-state solution. So with the departure of Trump in mid-January next year, Prime Minister Netanyahu will lose his staunch supporter in the White House, and already some concern is being noted in certain Israeli circles. Indeed, some Israeli commentators have even claimed that a Biden victory spells disaster for the Middle East as Netanyahu will not be able to count on the same level of support from the White House. For Israel, its bilateral relationship with the United States is an asset of utmost significance, both regionally and internationally. The Biden administration, in keeping with past practice, will view Israel as its most important strategic ally in the Middle East. In my view, it is unlikely that Iran and Israel will escalate their conflict, as it is in their own individual interest to maintain a good relationship with the new Biden administration and not to drag it into a new conflict in the Middle East region. So in my view, contrary to popular belief, I view Trump's North Korea policy to have been a partial success, as North Korea continues to refrain from carrying out nuclear weapon and long-range ballistic missile tests. Previous US administrations from the Clinton presidency onwards were not successful in this regard, and their policies were failures, as North Korea went on to start testing nuclear weapons in 2006, as well as long-range ballistic missiles. In my view, furthermore, the UN Security Council sanctions against North Korea also have been a failure and a mistake, as only the North Korean people suffer, and no policy change has been achieved in Pyongyang as regards nuclear weapons policy. In fact, there is not a single case of UN or other sanctions bringing about a reversal in nuclear policy in a target country. Such sanctions have failed in the cases, for example, of South Africa, Iraq, Iran, Libya, India, and Pakistan. Had it not been for the bad advice given to Trump at the Hanoi summit by Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, there could have been agreement on the dismantlement of the Yongbyon nuclear complex in North Korea, which is its largest nuclear complex. In June this year, Biden said that he would be willing to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, quote, not to pursue a vanity project like Trump, but as part of an actual strategy that moves the ball forward on denuclearization, end of quote. In my view, a resumption of a new type of six-party talks involving South and North Korea, China, Japan, Russia, and the US, with the easing of sanctions on non-military goods to North Korea, could be the way to proceed. But at present, I do not see wise counsel prevailing, only continuation of what I regard as somewhat unrealistic and failed policies.